Yeah, I think I'm on like a mission to really support bold female brands, tell their stories, and connect with the right people ultimately so that they can live life on their terms.
I think most people listening probably wanna be in that bold category, right? Like, it makes
I
sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think I mean, just by its nature, right, like being an entrepreneur, you kinda have to be bold, right? And then I mean, you've seen my style and the way I communicate, the way I visually communicate, like, it is not calm,
Subtle.
chilled, neutral, subtle. It's not. It's not the way I operate. It and then you get that you figure that out as soon as you interact with me personally, as soon as you, like, come across my Instagram or my website, like, it is clear.
Yeah, because there's this pressure, I think, maybe not so much in the beginning, but as you go on to kind of what's the word? It's dim down your brand a little bit, and they all start to sort of look the same. It's similar font and it's similar light, unobstructive colors, things that are, I guess, the classic look, but it's everyone's doing it.
It's very easy in the online space. You kind of come into it with like eyes wide open. You're so excited. You're going to do your thing, but you need help and support. So you start to look at what other people are doing. And somehow along the way, you get wrapped up in this sea of sameness that is so common in this online space.
Yeah, and it almost is there's well, also it's like we can talk about this separately, but where there's
Yeah.
templates that people use for the same funnels, the same strategy, the same lead magnets, the same, like, aesthetic for it, all of it's the same, and so you
Yeah.
have this pressure to think that if this was the strategy that worked to get these people those 6 or 7 figures, then this is the strategy I need to follow, including the branding, when it couldn't be further from the truth, right?
100%. And it's just that's where we're when we talk about online space, it's so broad. There's so many businesses in that category. But I think, like, the sentiment both of us are kind of leaning into is very much in this, like, coaching space where it can get to feel a little, like, MLM-y or just like, "Hey, here's this thing to learn, repeat everything I've done, and now you'll get clients," and that's just not how things work.
Yeah, this is the thing that I see that I feel victim to. I think everyone tries it because if things aren't working for you, then you think the easiest thing you think to fix is your branding, but actually it's a lot harder than that. But it is the one that you think, oh, I can just start right now. Like, let me jump on Canva and experiment and find some stuff. And then you realize really quickly that there's a deeper problem in terms of like alignment and identification with your market, which is what I want to ask you about because I know
Yeah.
when we first met, you were going through a pivot and you're like, "Oh, I don't know if I wanna keep working with the same market and doing the same kind of things." So can you walk through what you started with as an entrepreneur and then
Mhm.
where you've gone with it?
Yeah, so I mean, like, when I first started, this is like I started my business in 2021. So when I first started, it was like, I don't know what I wanna do. It was like, if you're a big business, if you're a small business, like, I'll help you, like, and it kinda started with that, and then slowly started to narrow in, and I went down the road of, coaches, and that's kind of who I wanted to work with because that's who I was surrounded with in the environment I was in, and it felt like a good match because I'm someone who loves to travel. I'm a digital nomad. These people that I'm surrounded by are digital nomads. They understand the lifestyle. They believe in it as well, and, like, it felt like a good match at the time. I think it was more of a pivot to owning my style from a design perspective and kind of shifting away from, like, trying to mold myself to fit the coaching industry and pivoting back to who I am and what I enjoy doing, which is being bold and creative as well as extremely strategic and, like, helping people figure out how to do things in a way that's different.
Yeah, this is a key thing that I think is easy to get confused, and I've done this too, where yes, you need to serve a need that actually exists, and I definitely have created things where there was no need for, but I wanted to create them. But you know that that's fundamental, that's important, but it doesn't mean that your branding then has to be exactly how the industry is or how you think your customer wants to see it, because ultimately, like, especially with service, even products now, it's a personal thing, isn't it? You're leading that brand. They wanna know who you are, what the personality is, and you can't just copy the beige and the, usual cursive font.
Yes. I mean, like, you can, right? Like, you can do that, but your personality better match that, or you better be bringing it so hard in all the other areas of your brand, because the visuals is just that surface level piece that is almost like a bonus, right? Like, it's not going to like, your visuals can look incredible. If you don't have the rest of the brand to back it up, it's not gonna do shit for you. It's just not, right? Like, it doesn't matter. In some like, you can have brand design that's not very good and have an incredible rest of your brand, and you can be making multiple six figures, doing great. You're From my perspective, you're limiting yourself. There's opportunity to grow, but you're still doing like, you still built a brand. So, we've talked a lot about, like, design stuff because it's just so easy to recognize it when you're blending in and when you're trying to be the same, but it goes way deeper than just the colors and fonts, but it's something that I find a lot in the online space that it's a lot of times an indication that the rest of your brand is kind of copying what else is going on.
It's the language you use too. I know that's a big part of it, is like what language are you using or not using can also be a part of it. And who are the people you're holding up as your client examples or things that you've done? Like all of that is your brand as well, isn't it? Because you're choosing
Mhm.
to say this represents me. And I've definitely done it the wrong way before. Can you talk a little bit about, is there anything in that, even before this pivot, but maybe since you started 2021 to now, what do you think is the biggest entrepreneurial lesson you learned that you kind of wish you would have learned a little bit sooner?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly what we've been talking about is this ability to get support whilst putting it through your lens. And I think that is the biggest like lesson I've learned is to be able to be clear on what matters to you and why it's important and how you want to operate and what your vision is and what your values are and mission are. That's a huge part of your brand in the early stages of your business. The rest may develop and change, but when you have that lens to operate with, you're able to learn from mentors, learn from these people, and not just try to copy it, but take it in, absorb it, put it through I call it your brand lens. Put it through your brand lens to say, okay, how can I take those lessons learned and apply it to what I am trying to create.
What's something that you, because you're right, like, it's so tempting to create what other people tell you to create, and if you get the wrong coach, for example, a lot of times it might be copying what they've done, and that's not always the best. Is there anything that you look back on that you created that makes you cringe a little bit, or that you think, "Yeah, I wouldn't have done that now?"
Oh, 1000%. And somewhere I was told I needed to do all these like micro offers of like different things. And it just doesn't fit with how I approach it. Like I suddenly was told like had to just teach this content piece. But I was like, but people don't have the brand piece. How can I give it like it just was so chopped up and it just was not aligned with how I view things. And looking back, I was like, yeah, I got thrown off of my vision. I got like told the things to do because I thought that's how you're supposed to do it. Because I was so new to the space.
Yeah, there's some things too that this brings up a specific point of some things work in one industry but not another. And I'm guessing the advice you got was probably not from someone who had been successful doing branding and storytelling and all of that. It was probably from someone who was doing something different, right? Like,
Yeah, it's more like the traditional business coach type of thing. And again, it's not necessarily that this person was wrong or bad, and, like, I learned a lot from being in their program that has helped me, but it wasn't the right fit for me. There is a misunderstanding of the done that I do done for you service, and being mentored by someone who only could see coaching and maybe didn't see the done for you service side of, like, how it works and the benefit of it and the difference of it, I don't think helped either.
Yeah, this is something I relate really deeply to because this is where I had this where I was coached by someone who made their millions doing weight loss programs. And as we've talked about, that's just not something I align with. And
Yeah,
while there were helpful things like how do you approach a prospect and all the technical stuff, there was a lot of, stuff that really just didn't work. And that actually felt very out of alignment for me to do. And it took, like, to recognizing that to realize, "Okay, no, I'm not gonna do this direction. I'm gonna go this way instead." But sometimes you actually have to see what doesn't align first to know. I know
yeah,
you talk about, like, when you do your clarity calls, for example, you ask people you say sometimes you can describe what your brand is not, because that's easier than saying,
it's
"What is your
easier.
brand?"
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think, like I said, I learned so much from it was a year-long mastermind that I was in that I'm referring to just as, like, a reference for everybody, and I learned so much. So, there's sometimes I get frustrated with it that I, like, did it and spent an absurd amount of money on it and did not earn that money back, and feel in moments that it threw me off course and distracted me, but it also did help me a lot. Like, I learned a lot, and because of the things I learned, I'm able to help people that come into my world more.
Yeah, I think that that's so true, and also thinking about, like, making sure, one, if you're on the other end of that, like you said, that you are listening to what people are actually asking you for instead of what you think they need,
Yeah.
and then the other side of that being, are you trying in the sales calls and stuff, if you do that as part of your lead generation and conversion, are you pushing them in a direction that they actually don't need to go? And are you using, because I've had this happen before where people just say, "Oh, yeah, well, I do this, I do this. Yeah, we'll do this." And then you actually get the program, and that's not what you asked for at all. Like, it's
Yeah.
so frustrating.
It's so frustrating. It's a full bait and switch, and you're like, "Wait, what? I'm so confused. Wait a minute."
So frustrating. I wanna back up a little bit, though, and make sure I ask you about your experience of building a business while nomading. Because like I said before
Mm.
the call, you've traveled way more than most entrepreneurs I know. I think at one point you were living in on an island with, like, 40 people, was it? It's something crazy you were doing. You've had
Yes.
an experience, so tell a little bit,
Yes.
what was that like?
Yeah, so my journey to entrepreneurship was definitely different. I quit my job in 2020 just to travel, to do, like, a backpacking trip. It was 2020, so 3 months into that trip, things kind of went haywire and COVID happened, and I found myself in Thailand, ultimately decided to stay, which led to me living in Thailand for a year and a half. Fell in love with branding, really wanted to do that, started to dive into brand strategy, and again, like, was surrounded by all these, like, coaches and stuff, was like, "Oh, this feels like the right fit." So it's kind of like how things started, and then this year, I have been in Indonesia for the majority of the time. So definitely a lot of traveling. It's hard. I don't recommend it, honestly. If you're trying to build a business, I don't recommend trying to travel. I think coming to Asia is really helpful because there's a ton of digital nomads. There's a ton of entrepreneurs, and basing yourself in somewhere like a Chiang Mai or a Bali where there's tons of entrepreneurs, tons of people trying to figure it out. There's meetups, there's co-working spaces, there's a lot of opportunity to network, to find clients, to find potential partnerships. So that 100% will recommend. Low cost of living, so it's like a little less stress as far as like, oh my God, I need to make money. and you can breathe a little bit, but you have to be so disciplined in these places as well because you are in a candy store. Like it takes at minimum, I think if you go to somewhere new and you're trying to establish a routine that allows you to get work done, to be healthy, to meet people, to make friends, and try to see the place you're staying, like, at least you need at least 3 months to like, sitting somewhere. Like, having an apartment that you are in one city for 3 months to really create an environment that's conducive trying to build a business. So, yeah, that's that's my take on it. Like, I know we like to promote this digital nomad lifestyle, but I think unless you're purely a content creator or working for someone else, if you really want to build your business, trying to travel while doing it is extremely hard. And I think that's
Yeah.
another one of the biggest lessons I've learned.
Well, it's a big lie, this whole like, oh, you can travel and grow. I think you can travel and maintain. And that's something that I
Agreed.
saw. Like, you can
Agreed.
totally maintain your business if you've started it already and you're traveling fine. You can do that. But scaling and growing, no, I agree with you. I think 4 months even minimum to, like,
Yeah.
start to do it, but really, if you wanna be serious about it, you should be 6 months, and you should probably be going back to the same places so you don't have to discover your routine all over again. But I think, like, I spoke to this other lady, not too long ago who she created this huge travel blog. So she was, as you said, content creation. It made sense. But she said, even while I was traveling, I knew that I was in maintenance mode and I knew
Mhm.
that I'd have to come back home to actually scale. And that was a conscious choice. At that time, travel for me mattered more. And I think if you
Yeah.
go into it knowing that, fine. But it's a lie to say that you will travel and scale. It
Yeah.
doesn't
It's all
happen.
it doesn't work. It really doesn't. And that was a big reason why I wanted to come to Bali, where I was like, okay, I can just be there and be in that environment. It hasn't been the clicking moment that I was hoping for. So again, I'm still like trying to find what things are gonna be, but like it's been extremely hard to try to build a business. Like it doesn't work. Yes, you can work and travel and live from anywhere and it's incredible lifestyle. Like I love it. I'm never gonna tell you like not to try this lifestyle out, but it's different than a job. Like you are responsible for the entire thing. So it's just very different than what people like to put out there, and I hope I'm not being too negative on this podcast because I think it's, like, such an amazing thing, but I wanna give people the reality of it because it's so easy to scroll on Instagram and see the person in the cafe being like, "Just worked on my laptop, and now I'm gonna go do this and go do that." Most of that is it's set up. They've set up their business already, and now it's kind of operating very smoothly, or and they have 1 or 2 very consistent clients that allows them to do things that way, and they're in a play mode, like, it's different if you talk to someone who's trying to build and scale their business, they're the person in the co-working space. If they're in these places, they're the one in the co-working space all day long.
Yeah, and they're the ones often not even thinking to take the picture to tell you that they're working. So I
No.
think I don't think it's negative at all. Like the whole point of the show is to be real about the different sides of entrepreneurship, and the idea of being a digital nomad and entrepreneur is something that most people will either be doing right now and they feel this in their soul, but everyone's telling them it's possible, or
Yeah.
they're considering it. And I think that it's definitely worth it, like you said, it's amazing.
Yeah, 100%. It's amazing.
But the reality is and two, like, there is another side of it, I think, where you meet some incredible people and connections for collaborations in the future.
Mhm.
Definitely. So that from that side, it's like a longer term investment, I think, in your business, but in the short term, yeah, it's totally, totally different. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Is there something that has made it a little bit easier for you though, since you've been doing this for years now? Is there something that does make it a little bit more manageable for you or helps with your discipline or your routine?
Yeah, I mean, I think one is just the benefit of being around others that are doing the same thing. So it's just being surrounded by people that get it, the people that understand that it's not the shiny object you see on Instagram, that get it, not just from a like potential business opportunity collaboration perspective. I think purely from a commiseration perspective, an excitement perspective of like, oh my God, I just like got this client and they can celebrate those things with you. Like that is one of the biggest benefits again of being in a place. I think just from my personal experience of like a Chiang Mai or a Bali is that you are surrounded by other people doing the same thing so they get it. And that is so rare because last year I was with digital nomads, but most were digital nomads because they were working for companies that allowed them to work remotely. Very different being in a co-working space with people that are doing that versus building their own thing. It's very, very different. So that's number one. And then from more of a like technical type of thing, I think it's finding certain routines. So again, staying in places for I think a minimum 3 months is, like, non-negotiable if you really wanna, like, be able to build a routine. It's being able to, like, go to the gym. It's using Google Calendar, like, religiously. We kinda joked about this earlier, but, like, this is how you connect with people is send them your Calendly link or whatever scheduling thing you're using, and you just put everything on your calendar. And that includes your weekend adventure, that includes going to the gym, that includes making time for your friends. Like those stuff have to go on the calendar because, especially if you're in this mode of trying to build your business, it is so easy to sit at the co-working space all day, not move your body, let that stuff totally go by the wayside. And next thing you know, you're burning yourself out and you're exhausted and you don't love what you started out doing anymore. So Google Calendar is like your new best friend.
Well, the best part about Google Calendar is you can easily move things.
That's why I love it. And that's the beauty of being able to be in charge of things.
And putting in it was a good point you said to put in the stuff that's not just work,
Oh,
because that is your
100%.
time management, it matters what you're doing
Mhm.
in your downtime too. It's
Yeah.
also this idea of when you have Google Calendar, I think to see how you actually work, because not everyone's the same and people have different boundaries. Like for example, for me, I have no problem taking off a Tuesday afternoon if even if that means I have to work on Saturday, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
I'll totally do it, but some people don't want to do that. They have their weekend is their boundary because maybe they've got a partner or friends who have normal work hours, but I think you have to figure that out, and you can't try to
Yeah.
just live someone else's schedule.
No, not at all. And that's again a lot of reasons why people became entrepreneurs is because they didn't want to live someone else's schedule. So know what's going to work for you. A great tip I always learned is like to schedule the fun and non-business stuff first. Like that stuff goes on there first. So if it's a meditation routine that you do, if it's a morning walk somewhere, if it's your gym time, if it's meeting up with friends for drinks, playing sports, whatever it is, like put that stuff on your calendar and it gets to go on there first. Other things get to be put on there. You get to determine when you accept calls. Like I have my like call link set up so that you can't book a call on a Monday or a Friday purposely because a lot of times I'm going to go on a trip or be doing something or I just don't want to be tied to a call on those days. Those are my days to do other things and that's what I've decided my schedule is.
Final 2 questions for you. One is and this is one of the ones I sent you to, is we said all this, there's obviously a lotta headache and frustration of being an entrepreneur. Why is it always worth it for you?
Mm.
What makes you keep doing it?
I think because I found this thing that I genuinely enjoy doing, where for me, like, I love getting to be strategic and creative. Like, I just think that that is where I shine is like these two worlds that sometimes you don't always get to do the two worlds in a traditional sense. Like either you're strategic or you're creative. I get to do both. I get to do it for people I actually want to work with, not just, you know, a company I couldn't give two shits about. People I genuinely like and believe in and like want to support. And again, goes back to my mission of being able to live life on my terms. So, yes, it looks different and think, it's kind of maybe not the Instagram version that you may see, but it's still life on my terms. It's still that I get to go to the gym at 10 a.m. I don't have to go at 7 p.m. or 7 a.m., which I would never do because I am not a morning person. So, like, no, thank you. But yeah, it's
I
just like
always
this.
think for Sarah, I think, like, you've said it perfectly. I always think about this quote that people say related to children, and I'm not a parent, but I can see this as an entrepreneur a little bit, where it's like you say that you feel 50 what is it? It's like 51% it's the best thing you've ever done, and 49% you feel seriously fucked. And I
Yeah.
think that's what it's like.
It is so spot on, and sometimes it's gonna feel like you're 99.9% fucked, and but you're still like, "But I love this." So, it's okay, you're gonna be in those moments. I've had plenty of those moments, but then you also have these other moments where you're just, like, on top of the world, where you just, like, signed the biggest client you've ever had, and, like, they love your work, and it's amazing, and people are excited about it, or even just you've seen me recently, like, being able to speak at a meetup and, like, feel people connecting with my energy and how I speak about things and my perspective and, like, that being super exciting and, like, lighting me up on top of obviously, like, supporting people, like, seeing people's lights turn on, like, "Oh, this is what I get to do." Like, it's such a cool feeling.
Yeah, it's an incredible feeling. I think that is for me too the impact and seeing that directly and knowing that you're building something for you and for others. It's unmatchable. This is where last and final question for you is people who are loving what you're saying and are working on creating their bold brands, where can they connect with you?
Yeah, if anyone's interested in connecting, my Instagram is a great place to reach out. My DMs are always open, but it's at Solo Boss Design Co. That's like the easiest place. There's a link to my website. So yeah, it's the best place to chat with me for sure and learn more.
Amazing. I'll put all the links in the show notes. And thank you so much for sharing the story, all the real, the beige,
The
the
real
cursive,
deal.
all of it.
We're bold and loud here. Let's go.